Hey everybody, Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a quick preview for the Microsoft Surface Book. This was announced this past Tuesday, October 6, 2015, alongside the Surface Pro 4. And this is significant because just like the Surface Pro was the first computer Microsoft ever made, well, the Surface Book is the first laptop. Now you can see it'll be launching on October 26th. Unfortunately, I don't have it in my possession yet, but this will give you a good idea of the pricing specifications and who Microsoft is trying to appeal to. So the base model is $14.99. Again, that will be available on the 26th of this month. 128 gig SSD, a Core i5 Intel Skylake dual-core processor with 8 gigs of RAM. You can then step up for $16.99 to 256 gigs of SSD internal storage. Keep in mind, all of these do have a full-size SD card slot, which can alternatively be used for additional storage. If you want to step up to a dedicated GPU, because that is an option, believe it or not, that's part of the new hybrid capability of this system. Of course, the two models I just mentioned at $14.99 and $16.99 do not offer that option. For $18.99, you can get the model that does have an integrated NVIDIA solution. I believe it carries 1 gig of RAM. Don't expect to do any high-end gaming, even though this machine is capable of UHD output. Again, gaming laptops in general are all limited, and this is far from a gaming laptop. I cannot reiterate that enough. So if you think the extra money you'll be spending will net you high-end gaming, it absolutely will not. I assure you of that. Now, could this GPU offset some processing power in other applications? Possibly, but generally light gaming, and I would say only better than what is offered in the integrated Iris solution that comes with the i7 Surface Pro line as it stands right now, and that's both in the Surface Pro 3 Gen and, of course, the Pro 4 Gen as well. You can step up to, for over $2,000, the i7 model, also with 256 gigs of storage and 8 gigs of RAM, and again, with that NVIDIA-based GPU option. And then last but not least, the top of the line, $26.99, yes, you heard correctly, for 512 gigs of storage, 16 gigs of RAM, and that Skylake i7 processor complemented by the NVIDIA GPU that's built into the keyboard. Now, this is a hybrid, and that's one thing that isn't new about it. I mean, when you look at the design here, as I give us the 360 look, it is innovative, no question about it, but in terms of the actual screen portion of this 13.5-inch laptop detaching, that's far from a new concept. That's something we've seen with many different devices, whether we're talking about going back to the Asus Transformer, which also at one point had a battery integrated into the keyboard, much like the Surface Book here. That really isn't a new concept. What is new, again, is getting it from Microsoft, getting it with these sort of specifications, this build quality that Microsoft is already expected to deliver, and of course Microsoft's reputation as one of the largest tech companies in the world, and quite frankly, Windows on 95% of the world's computers speaks for itself. Now, Windows 10 Pro out of the box, no matter which model you go with, not as many options here as you find with the Surface Pro 4, which is odd, but maybe not, because remember, the Surface Book is a first-gen product, and Microsoft has to see how customers receive it, how well or poorly it's received. I expect it'll be received quite well before they will start taking on even more configuration options, because of course that does equate to more costs. Now, in terms of the specifications, this does have a bigger display than the Surface Pro 3 or 4, even though the 4 did go up by 0.3 inches. Here we've got a 13.5-inch display. The entire machine weighs in at almost 3.5 pounds. The Surface portion, the screen itself, 3000 by 2000 resolution, also sporting the same display type as the Surface Pro 4, which is new. Instead of being clear type, we're dealing with Pixel Sense now, as Microsoft is dubbing it. You can see that right there. 3:2 aspect ratio, 10-point multi-touch display. As I mentioned before, a 6th gen Skylake i5 or i7 processor. No M3 option here, which to me is curious. They could have offered that, certainly. Up to 12 hours of video playback. That's another curious specification. In my mind, this means we're realistically looking at 8, maybe 9 hours of performance, and that's because there are two batteries, one in the tablet portion and one in the keyboard. And again, if you go with the NVIDIA dedicated GPU on board, that'll be the other thing that will be crammed into the keyboard beyond that additional battery that comes in all of the models. In terms of graphics for the i5 and the i7, of course, the i5 model, as you saw above in the specifications, is going to come with the Intel i5 standard, I believe it's the 5100 graphics, or excuse me, 515 graphics solution that's found in the Surface Pro 4. But when you step into the dedicated GPU models, of course, you get that NVIDIA chip, which still has not been identified to this point. Of course, 8 or 16 gigs of RAM, no 1 terabyte option, oddly enough, for SSD here, which I would have thought would have been in that $2,700 build, but it isn't. You do get on the keyboard 2 full-size USB 3.0 ports, a full-size SD card reader, which to me is incredibly important and does drastically differentiate it, believe it or not, from its Surface Pro 4 counterpart, where there is only a micro SD card for storage expansion. You also have the Surface Connect port for charging, and also for use of the new Surface Dock, which is backwards compatible with this device and your Surface Pro 3 from last year, if you have one. And then, of course, a headset jack and a mini display port that is UHD capable on output. 5 megapixel front-facing camera, 8 megapixel rear that's also capable of 1080p video capture, very similar to what's found on the Surface Pro 4. Dual microphones, and of course dual stereo speakers that are front-facing. And in addition to that, of course, the Surface Pen, which has been revamped, now 1024 levels of sensitivity, is also included in this. So this is an attempt to deliver the best of both worlds for people who found the Surface Pro 4 incomplete because they wanted more than just the type cover experience. They wanted more computing power. They wanted a real laptop from Microsoft. Well, that's exactly what Microsoft has attempted to deliver in this product. So that pretty much answers the question as to who this device is targeting specifically. Microsoft obviously had enough feedback to warrant making a laptop because they had successfully, in my opinion, starting with Gen 1, put out a product unlike any other. But of course, the Surface Pro 3 set the bar at a whole nother standard or level. Here with the Surface Book, Microsoft's calling it the ultimate laptop, and I understand why. Even though there are many other hybrids that are out there and have been for years, none are going to perform quite like this one and have the specifications and computing power that this one will have. Keep in mind that that processor is dual core. Microsoft is stating that you can do 3D modeling with AutoCAD across any of the models, which is specifically curious considering the Surface Pro 4, which is based around the exact same specifications, they say can only do 3D modeling with AutoCAD in the i7 models. So that's part of the reason that I think that the i5 models in the Surface Pro lineup are also going to be just as capable as the i7. After all, the i7 is just a higher clock speed and a different graphics chipset. When you separate this tablet from its keyboard dock, you will lose the battery and also the dedicated GPU. So if you have an i7 model, it'll default to the Iris integrated graphics, as opposed to, of course, the NVIDIA dedicated GPU you're getting in the keyboard. In terms of other views, just to quickly show you what this thing looks like, it has basically a ribbed hinge that almost reminds me of a robotic arm from the 1980s, which isn't a bad thing. I don't think the design here is bad. I think overall it's a very nice looking machine in just about every way. And that's definitely important because part of getting this right is getting the aesthetic right. And after all, it is expensive. The entry level, in my opinion, the best value at $14.99. I really don't feel that the dedicated GPU is going to be able to accomplish much, especially with that 3000 by 2000 resolution display. You have to be realistic. I mean, my Razer Blade 2014, not capable of pushing out the graphics performance with a much more powerful dedicated GPU with much more RAM with its higher res display. So there's no reason to think that this 1 gig dedicated GPU NVIDIA solution is going to be able to allow you to game at 3000 by 2000, let alone really game in general with anything beyond medium settings at probably 720p-ish resolution. So if you're looking to replace a last-gen console, maybe approach the current gen console graphics capability. That's what the dedicated GPU inside this machine is going to let you do. But do not for a moment believe that you're going to be able to game at 3000 by 2000 on modern titles by stepping up to any of these three models. It simply is not going to happen. I also wish that we had more options. As I mentioned, this is a first-gen product. That explains why there isn't as much configuration, but I still will continue to scratch my head why there is not a 16 gig option for the i5 models, or a 1 terabyte hard drive option for any of the models, i5 or i7. But I've also heard from sources that we will be seeing those later, and it makes sense, quite frankly. Once Microsoft sees, again, how well this is received, that's when they will decide to add different variants, more options than presently exist, much like they've done with the Surface Pro as it's evolved from first now to fourth generation. So I like what they've done here. And by the way, in terms of battery life, since it is split across the actual tablet itself and the keyboard, when the tablet is on its own, you're looking at presumably somewhere around 5 hours of battery life, 6 by their video playback claims. Without the battery in the keyboard, that's what we are all assuming at this point. Also remember that when it's separated from the keyboard, it has no ports other than the headphone jack, microphone jack, nothing else. Because, well, frankly, there is nothing else on it. Everything else is integrated into the keyboard. And if you didn't notice already, the keyboard does resemble a MacBook Pro. A very big glass touchpad, which I'm sure is going to make a lot of users happy, and this is definitely an attempt to pull Apple users over to Windows 10 and what Microsoft has made. And after all, I don't blame them. That's a big market that may not account for the mass quantity of machines out there on the planet Earth, but when it comes to the luxury ones, it certainly does warrant going after Apple's market share. And that's exactly why the keyboard looks the way it does. Now, personally, it doesn't rub me exactly the right way, but for many of you, especially Apple users, it's going to be tempting. To me, it looks like it's going to be a little bit awkward coming from a PC, but then again, until I actually start using it, and I will be reviewing this, don't worry, impressions are a bit of a question mark. But I do give Microsoft a tremendous amount of credit putting this product forward. I mean, it's a whole different breed of product from the traditional Surface Pro 4. I still personally prefer the Surface Pro 4. It's a more novel and, in my opinion, groundbreaking product than producing a laptop hybrid, which we have just a glutton of out there from just about every PC maker. There's no question the Surface Book will be one of the best, if not the best, hybrid out there. But again, we've got a market flooded by devices of this nature. So $14.99 keeps it relevant, but for a lot less than that, there are many options with a little less processing power and arguably maybe more resolution, more RAM. So even though this is, where Skylake, Intel's 6th gen low voltage chips are going to be on the showcase, so to speak, or they will be showcased in this product as well as the Surface Pro 4, you have to keep in mind that you are paying a significant premium in order to get that Microsoft brand name. And even though I could give you the weight of the tablet separated from the keyboard, again, because it has no ports, literally, other than that headphone and microphone jack, this really isn't a complete product without sitting on its keyboard, whereas the Surface Pro 4 absolutely is a complete product without the type cover. You're just going to be more limited in what you can actually physically do when it comes to input, clearly. But because the Surface Pro 4 has a USB port, has a display port, has a micro SD card slot on body, different products, even though much of what they are sharing under the hood is exactly the same, outside of that dedicated GPU solution in the higher-end Surface Book models. Closing note, because this is one thing that I find slightly creepy about this product and Apple, and I know I'm not the only one to notice this, is that they've kind of exchanged marketing here. Now we've got a book coming from Microsoft, which, of course, Apple, known for their MacBook products, and Apple, on the other hand, getting ready to release their iPad Pro, which is, of course, synonymous with all of Microsoft's Surface Pro. So a little bit odd that here in 2015, we've got Apple and Microsoft exchanging marketing routes, or naming, I should say, of their products. and trying to compete directly with one another on a level unlike ever before. And that's, of course, because Microsoft is now opening up to more hardware, which Apple has to be concerned about. After all, they've had that market pretty much on lockdown, and now here Microsoft is coming in with a product that, from every perceivable angle, looks better than anything Apple is making, and it is, arguably. Even if I'm not personally a fan of the pricing of these models with the dedicated GPUs, Apple fans have to look at this and say, wow, this is so far beyond anything that we are able to get our hands on, that it's almost an instant buy. And if what is really holding you back is Windows 10, well, then you're basically selling yourself short, in my opinion, because my experience with Windows 10 has been great thus far. So a lot to like here outside of the pricing. I still think the Surface Pro 4, personally, is the more innovative product, as it always has been since day one. But there's no question this is another great option for those of you who are looking for more of a complete laptop experience that the Surface Pro simply couldn't do for you specifically. After all, I know so many consumers who say that Microsoft's marketing of it's the tablet that can replace your laptop feel that that is nonsense. Well, here is the laptop that can replace your laptop and can also be a tablet in the event that you want a 13.5-inch 3000 by 2000 display to be portable. In terms of writing on screen, that's going to be a little bit more awkward here than it will be with the Surface Pro 4. That's another thing that I think is an advantage to the Pro 4. But otherwise, a great product from Microsoft that I am really looking forward to eventually reviewing for all of you. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. And of course, as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.